2, 3.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everybody who's here. Thank you for coming out to the U.S. Courthouse this morning, to the federal building, and what is soon to be the location for the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Washington, our Richland division. We are so grateful to have such a good turnout this morning. So pleased to have this group of speakers who's here today to be with us. My name is Richard Barker. I am the press officer for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Washington. And it is my pleasure to introduce those who will be speaking with us today and leaving and giving a few remarks to this group. First off today, we are going to have the pleasure of hearing from Judge Shea, Senior United States District Court Judge Edward F. Shea, who has been in this building in the Tri-Cities area as our first federal judge in the Tri-Cities for 25 years. Judge Shea has been a tremendous advocate for building and establishing a U.S. Attorney's Office here in Richland. And I think it is fair to say that this would not be happening today, but for the great work that Judge Shea has done and the groundwork that he's laid. After we hear from Judge Shea, we're going to have the opportunity to hear from the first United States Circuit Court judge for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to sit in the Eastern District of Washington, Judge Salvador Mendoza, Jr. We are so grateful to have Judge Mendoza with us this morning. Judge Mendoza not only is the first to sit in this district, he's selected this location, Richland, Washington, for his chambers. And we have been so fortunate to have him as a district court judge. We'll miss him in that role, but we're very excited for his leadership on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Following our two federal judges who are speaking first to us this morning, we'll hear from some of our state and local law enforcement officers. We'll hear from Chief Guerrero from the Kennewick Police Department and from Andy Miller from the Benton County Prosecutor's Office. Chief Guerrero has 25 years of law enforcement experience. He's also the chair of the board for Northwest HIDA. And in that role, Chief Guerrero and his team have been fantastic with their forward-thinking approach to targeting transnational drug organizations and focusing on the reduction in the manufacture, importation, distribution, and too often deadly use of illegal narcotics in the entire Northwest United States, as well as in the Tri-Cities area specifically. And of course, Benton County Prosecutor Andy Miller has been a huge advocate for state, local, and federal partnerships, like so many of the law enforcement officers that we have with us today. Mr. Miller has been in that role for 35 years. Just to put that in perspective, I was 6 when Mr. Miller became the county prosecutor in Benton County. He survived 9 elections, and he'll be ending his tenure this year. And we'll be sad to see Mr. Miller go because he has been such a great advocate for these state, local, and federal partnerships that have made and keep the Richland community safe, and the entire Tri-Cities area safe. Last and certainly not least, you are going to hear from our United States Attorney, the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for the Eastern District of Washington, Vanessa Waldref. Now, I've asked Andy Miller to give an introduction for Vanessa, so I will be very short in my remarks. There are a lot of wonderful things I could say about our leader. It is hard to believe that it has only been a year since U.S. Attorney Waldref was appointed by the President, unanimously confirmed by the Senate, and led the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District. In that time, she has overseen the largest ever healthcare fraud settlement in this district. She's been appointed to a key subcommittee on environmental justice. And just recently, she was part of the prosecution of a local rancher that resulted in the largest ever restitution award in the history of the Eastern District of Washington. To put into perspective what Ms. Waldrop has been able to accomplish in just her first year as the U.S. Attorney, the Richland U.S. Attorney's Office has been a dream, has been a goal, has been rumored for at least the last 25 years. Ever since Judge Shea took the bench, there were some that said that today might never happen, that it wasn't possible. I think it is noteworthy that in her first year, the first woman to serve as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Washington made this Tri-Cities office, this U.S. Attorney's Office that we'll be announcing today, a reality. And we are so grateful for her leadership and for her role in keeping our district safe. All right, with that, I will turn the time over to our speakers. Your Honor, Judge Shea, the microphone is all yours.
But I'm happy to be here today and honored actually to be here on this historic occasion. I've been here now just short of 25 years. I was sworn in May 28th of 1998, and I was the only judge that ever had a full-time chambers here in the United States Courthouse in Richland. During those years, my first task, I thought, when I saw that there was a U.S. probation office here, there was a clerk's office here, I thought, why isn't there a U.S. Attorney's Office here? And I thought it was critical for the growth of this facility and for the Eastern District of Washington to have a U.S. Attorney's Office in Richland. And over the years since then, I worked with local government, city councils, court commissioners, county commissioners, law enforcement agencies, the media, the Tri-City Herald, and civic groups in order to bring that about. And every time there was another U.S. attorney appointed over those 25 years, our hopes were renewed. But each time that occurred, our hopes were disappointed. No matter how often we tried, no matter what tactics we adopted, no matter the statistics that documented and supported the establishment of an office here, we were unsuccessful. And during those years, since 1998, this community has grown to over 300,000 people. And while I was the only judge in this courthouse for many of those years, good fortune was ours when Judge Salvador Mendoza was appointed to follow me here in Richland as the United States District Court Judge. And as Mr. Barker said, he is now on the United States Court of Appeals, and that is a tremendous honor for our community, and he has decided to remain here in the courthouse. We also were blessed with the appointment of Judge Dimke, who has established her chambers here in Richland as well. So instead of being the only federal district judge in this area, I now had two colleagues, Judge Mendoza and Judge Dimke, and they were strong advocates for the establishment of this office. Indeed, it was Judge Dimke, a former Assistant United States Attorney, as well as a former United States Magistrate, that made the point that in the entire country, this was the only United States courthouse with active judges that did not have a U.S. Attorney's Office. You would think that that was a dramatic point that would assist in the establishment of it. And as it turned out, perhaps it was, but I'm sure that others who are speaking today may have greater insight in that regard. We were hopeful that with the establishment of yet another new U.S. attorney, we would again renew our efforts and be successful. And it was exactly 50 weeks ago to this day that we went to Spokane, Judge Mendoza and I and others, and attended the swearing in of Vanessa Waldrop, a person that I did not know, but she had the strong credentials of being a double Georgetown graduate, and I'm an alum of Georgetown Law, as is she. And so I was hopeful that there might be some connection there. It's a tenuous one, admittedly, but I was hopeful that, as slim as it was, that might provide some leverage with our advocacy for an office here. It was there that we heard about Vanessa Waldrop. And I want to quote from the speech that her sister gave, because it was there that I learned of her community, her interest in community service. Her sister described her as a woman who would bring three attributes to the work of the U.S. Attorney: dedication to service, passion for justice, and grit. Grit she defined as having courage, resolve, and strength of character. Then Vanessa Waldref, the first woman to be named the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Washington, spoke. And among the many inspiring points that she made were her recognition that with change there is opportunity. And that seemed to feed into the narrative that there was change and perhaps we did have an opportunity for this office. She said, quote, "But change also offers amazing opportunities for growth. And we don't want fear to hold us back. Instead, new seasons offer us chance to ask ourselves how we can show up to this new challenge." Sorry, I should have turned off my cell phone as well as my watch. The new seasons offer us the chance to ask ourselves how we can show up to this new challenge, how we can be agile and responsive to what our community needs now. And when I heard those words, all I could think of was our community needs a U.S. Attorney's Office. She described the U.S. Attorney as charged with ensuring that laws be faithfully executed. And as the lawyer for the people of the Eastern District of Washington, she pledged to pursue this mandate, driven by the values of respect, building a safe and strong community, and ensuring the fair and impartial administration of justice for all. And my hope soared that with that attitude and those values, our cause might be successful. And I also hope that for many years she would continue to be the United States Attorney. It was not long after that the buzz was clear. She was exploring that very option. And then we learned that, in fact, she had obtained the funds and that there would be an office here in the city of Richland. Vanessa Waldref, she was able to accomplish in less than a year, 11 months, what no one else had been able to accomplish in 25 years. Please join me in a round of applause for that magnificent accomplishment.
Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking Vanessa Waldref for asking me to speak here today. And unlike Judge Shea, I actually had an opportunity to see Ms. Waldref in action. She had a few cases in front of me when I was a district court judge, and I knew then what we have all known now, that she is tenacious, that she is dedicated, that she is an incredible talent, and lucky for us, she's our U.S. Attorney. I'm honored to take part in this historic day for the Tri-Cities legal community. But today is a celebration not only for the legal and the law enforcement community, it's also an important day for the people of Tri-Cities and the surrounding areas. Through her leadership and Herculean efforts, Vanessa Waldref and her entire team have made the opening of a permanent United States Attorney's Office in Richland, and in this building, finally, a reality. I have always been proud to call this community my home, and I grew up in Prosser and spent most of my life and legal career here in the Tri-Cities. Earlier this year, the President Biden, nominated me, and I was confirmed by the Senate to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I'm excited to establish my temporary judicial chambers here in Richland, and specifically here in the federal building and U.S. Courthouse, and hope to have my permanent chambers here in Richland. I want to thank GSA, especially Art Hall, for making this possible. I hope that establishing my judicial chambers in Richland will continue to expand the recognition and the development of our legal community in this part of the state. Today, I want to recognize the people who work so very hard. And I'm not going to name all of them. Most of them, actually, all of them, I call them my friends. And it's okay that you have a judge who can call prosecutors friends, who can call law enforcement officers friends, who can call defense attorneys friends. That's okay. And many of whom are here today celebrating this historic day. And I would be remiss not to mention Judge Shea and his leadership and steadfast support for the development of a vibrant legal community in the Tri-Cities. Today is yet another illustrative example of his continued efforts. So I want to say thank you to Judge Shea, and I want if you could join me in giving him a round of applause. And of course, thank you again to Vanessa and the U.S. attorneys that are joining us here today. The Tri-Cities is an important and diverse community, ever growing and continuing to flourish. Throughout my career, I have been lucky enough to witness the bright and committed lawyers who practice in my courtroom. In the Tri-Cities and the surrounding areas, prosecution of cases have been limited and mostly undertaken by state and county offices like Andy Miller. Having a U.S. Attorney's Office based in Richland is a vital because it expands the federal prosecutorial presence here and increases the safety of our community. By maintaining an office in Richland, the U.S. attorneys can do their important work with more impact and intention while responding to the ever-changing needs and priorities of the community. The Tri-Cities community welcomes you and this permanent presence. I also want to thank Andrea George. Andrea is out here somewhere. Andrea is the executive director of the Federal Defenders of the Eastern District of Washington and Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. I know the Federal Defenders is also working to establish a presence here in Richland, an effort which I wholeheartedly support. Having both the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Federal Defenders in Tri-Cities is essential to the creation of a stronger, fair, and more balanced system where all people feel heard and supported. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak at this important event. I look forward to watching this community continue to grow, and today is an exciting step in the right direction. The future of the Tri-Cities shines even brighter with the efforts of you, Vanessa, and your entire impressive team. So thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
As you will see, none of us coordinated our speeches. We're saying many of the same things. So do not be surprised. My speech is a little bit shorter than both of the judges, but as I just said, we're speaking really about the same things. I would be remiss if I did not start by thanking the U.S. Attorney of the Eastern District of Washington, Vanessa Waldriff. Some of you may not know, but the opening of this office, you definitely now know, this has been talked about for many, many years, and she is the one who has got it across the finish line, where others have not been able to do that. Her entire staff have been part of the work that's done in the Tri-Cities for many of the same years. So if anybody from the U.S. Attorney's Office from the Eastern District, if you would raise your hand so folks here can see who you all are. They have been part of this community whether they've lived here or not, and I think it's important that they get recognized. So let's give all of them and the U.S. Attorney a round of applause. I would also like to thank those in the federal court system who have helped by supporting the opening of this office. As you know, and as you have heard, it would have not occurred without the support of Senior United States District Court Judge Shea. Judge Shea, you have been a huge supporter of the Tri-Cities for as long as I've been in policing. You have been a supporter of law enforcement. You have been a supporter of defense. You have created justice in the federal system that is much appreciated by all of us. So thank you very much. Thank you to United States Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Mendoza for your continued support. There's many people in the federal court system in Richland that should be recognized. Many of them are here today. We've also received support from the Yakima federal court system and the Spokane federal court system for many, many years. So thank you to all of them. Finally, the last thanks I think it's very important to give is the hard work of our federal agents and task force officers. These folks come from local jurisdictions, state jurisdictions, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Drug Enforcement Administration, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Homeland Security Investigations, the U.S. Marshal Service, Border Patrol, and Federal Probation. The need for a U.S. Attorney's Office in Richland is only because of the work that they continue to do day in and day out. Many of them are here today. I'm not going to ask them to raise their hands, but they know who they are, and their work is what continues to make the importance of having a U.S. Attorney's Office here possible. So thank you to all of them. Let's give them a big round of applause. For those who may not know how the court system works, the U.S. Attorney's Office has stood side by side with policing for many, many years. This opening of this office is only going to improve the efficiencies that many of which are already in place. But as the U.S. Attorney and I were speaking about before, it means less time stopping in Ritzville for coffee prior to getting here. It allows for that conversation to happen across the hallway versus over the phone or via Zoom. It allows for those efficiencies for a task force officer or federal agent to walk into an office and have a direct dialogue. That only improves the justice system for our area. So they have been here. This is not like a new attorney's office that's opening in Richland just down the street. This is something that's an enhancement, and we are very fortunate to have here. So thank you once again to Vanessa. Thank you to our federal court partners. On behalf of the chiefs of police and sheriffs of Southeast Washington, thank you to our federal partners for continuing to have the willingness to stand side by side as we continue to see a rise in crime, the victimization of citizens over the internet, the continued distribution of illegal narcotics in our region. They are continuing to be there right beside us. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to our federal partners. I will now turn this over to Benton County Prosecutor Andy Miller. Thank you.
One thing that I've been able to see is both judges and Chief Guerrero had these very professional remarks typewritten on official paper. For you detectives in the back, I'm prepared for this talk, the same way I prepare with my closing arguments. Old school. I'm so happy to introduce Vanessa, and I'm so excited about today's ribbon cutting ceremony. But today is not just a ribbon cutting ceremony. Today is a day where we're taking a step to make southeastern Washington a safer and better place to live. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Richland is going to bring much needed additional federal resources to our community to make things safe. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Richland is going to increase the corroboration between our local law enforcement officers and our federal law enforcement officers as they seek their common goal, achieving the best justice for each case. We have a couple of great examples here on the partnership that are only going to get better. We have Julie Long, our Chief Criminal Deputy Prosecutor, who has worked over the years with Stephanie Von Martyr and other federal prosecutors to work on complicated, dangerous drug cases and deciding which cases should go federal and which cases should go state. We have Laurel Holland, who is a Benton County Deputy Prosecutor, and she's also a Special Assistant U.S. Attorney, thanks to Vanessa. And Laurel specializes in cases where children are the victims of horrific crimes, and she specializes in the cases that are going to root out the perpetrators and deter sex offenders from committing crimes in the future. And when Laurel and Julie sit down with their federal counterparts and the law enforcement officers from both the federal side and the state side, they can now even better look at resources the feds have versus the state. They can look at evidentiary issues that the feds may not have that the states have, and they can look at these very complicated sentencing schemes in the federal system versus the state system to see how to achieve the best just result. But now I have the privilege of introducing the woman who made all this happen, Vanessa. Vanessa grew up in Spokane, another person in Eastern Washington, and thankfully she came back to Eastern Washington after graduating from Georgetown University and then Georgetown Law School. And getting degrees like that, and she had a clerkship with a federal judge, those credentials gave Vanessa an opportunity to be successful anywhere. And thankfully for us, she chose to come back to Eastern Washington to become successful. Vanessa quickly gained a reputation for being a very skilled litigator in private practice. But again, thankfully for us, Vanessa then turned to public service, where she worked as an assistant U.S. attorney in the Spokane office. And she had such a great reputation, and this is not the first time I've had the chance to say great things about Vanessa. The two senators called me up and asked me about who should the next U.S. attorney be, and soon into those conversations I learned that I was only confirming what they already had decided, that she would be the great leader for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Eastern Washington. Vanessa is a prosecutor's prosecutor. She understands the big picture, such as the need to open up a U.S. Attorney's Office in Richland. But she also understands the value and the importance of the law enforcement officers and the prosecutors in the trenches who do the work. And if any of you had any doubts about that, you could just see Vanessa mingling around today with the prosecutors and with the law enforcement officers, and she always makes that a point when she comes to visit here or when she's in Spokane. She knows the challenges that prosecutors and law enforcement face. She wants to give them some support so they can get the justice that the victims and the people of Southeastern Washington deserve. And I am so honored to introduce our star of the day, Vanessa Waldrop.
Well, this is an extraordinary moment. Thank you so much. And I am truly honored to be here and to be speaking with so many people who have served as my mentor and as extraordinary leaders of the Tri-Cities legal community, the judiciary, of law enforcement, and of the prosecutors' offices here in the Tri-Cities area. I'm a bit overwhelmed by it all, so it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. Judge Shea and Judge Mendoza have been just extraordinary leaders of the judiciary here in the Tri-Cities, and they are very good judges, and they are very strong advocates for a Richland U.S. Attorney's Office. So I knew coming into this role that there was strong support within our judiciary for having the U.S. Attorney's Office right here in Richland. And my background in the U.S. Attorney's Office as an assistant United States attorney and working cases here in Richland really forms the basis of knowing how do we best serve all of Eastern Washington. We have 20 counties east of the Cascades, from Idaho, Oregon, up to Canada. And what we need to do is make sure that we are serving everyone. So when I got to step into this role, I knew I wanted to take a hard look at how can we most efficiently and effectively bring the most impactful cases to build a safe and strong Eastern Washington community. So I'm so pleased that the judges were able to be here and to speak to how years and years of hearing critical cases that are about the safety and about how we are doing all we can to have this community be vibrant and healthy and safe for everyone will now be more institutionally supported by a staffed U.S. Attorney's Office right here. And I'm so grateful to hear from our law enforcement partners right here in Eastern Washington, here in the Tri-Cities, because this is true. It's not a brand new office. We are going to be staffing an office that is already doing absolutely critical, important work. And we've been doing that work for years. And we've been doing it with just the incredible support of our law enforcement partners at the local, state, and federal level. I truly want to thank Andy Miller, who has been an incredible mentor for me coming into this role, the way he leads his office. And for him to call me a prosecutor's prosecutor is the greatest compliment that I can receive, because he is truly still in the courtroom advocating for justice for citizens of Benton County. And I am so honored that he would be here with me today to celebrate this new opening of a formal office. And truly, it would not be happening but for everyone here today. The federal partners that I've had the pleasure of getting to know and work with in new capacities as the United States Attorney that go beyond what the work that I was able to do as an Assistant United States Attorney have really opened my eyes to the critical work that we're doing throughout the district. And I know I will fail in thanking every person who deserves so much gratitude for their investment in the community here today. But I will try. I'll try to list off some of our incredible federal partners who are here and able to celebrate with us today. And in so doing, it shows how here in Eastern Washington, and particularly here in the Tri-Cities, it is truly through our partnership and collaboration over the last decades that we've been able to serve our community effectively and try to take on the law enforcement challenges that continue. So I want to highlight how we have our FBI partners here. So thank you very much for Peter Orth and Kelly Smith, who are here from the FBI. We have had the Safe Streets Task Force here in the Tri-Cities doing incredibly important work. And they do so by working so closely with our DEA task force and our Metro task force, which is staffed by our local and state law enforcement officers. And these task forces all together look at the most impactful cases that we can bring here in Eastern Washington. They are looking at the sources of drugs that are coming into our communities, the real challenges of narcotics trafficking, the gun trafficking, and the ways that the opioid epidemic are impacting our community. And so through the work that these task forces are all doing together, we are force multiplying our efforts in law enforcement to bring those important cases. And I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the work of Stephan Martyr, who I think she and I'm only a fraction of the orders at the Starbucks in Richville on the way down from the Spokane office to the Richland office here. I don't know how many phone calls I've had with Stephanie coming down here on the phone, coming to meet with all of her task force partners and our law enforcement partners here. The work that we are doing to ensure that our efforts to try to combat just the devastating opioid epidemic and the drugs that are coming into our community needs to be an absolute priority, and I am grateful for the leadership that my office has taken with our partners. We can only do it with you to bring those critical cases. We also have our partners from DOE here today, and I am grateful that Chris Otero was able to join us, and so many others from our Department of Energy work. The presence of Hanford here in the Tri-Cities area has been, so critical to the economy, and the federal funds that come here to fund the important remediation work to have our environment be safe and our communities be vibrant and healthy. Those funds need to be dedicated to the environmental remediation work that they are focused on. And our work in our white collar section and our environmental crime section, led by Dan Fruchter, has been critical in ensuring that our federal resources are used properly. So I am so grateful for our efforts by our Department of Energy partners and our office in focusing our long-standing criminal efforts and also our civil fraud efforts. And I'll talk to Tyler Tornabene as well, who's led our civil fraud efforts for so long here in the Tri-Cities to ensure that millions of dollars is being invested back into the community as it should be to ensure that our neighborhoods are safe, our families are healthy, and that our community can be as safe and strong as possible. And I want to highlight the work of our Homeland Security investigation partners. And they are critical partners with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And as Andy Miller spoke about, we do incredible work with our state partners in ensuring that our children are safe. And there are certain crimes that are more appropriately prosecuted in our state system, and then really critical cases that are brought by our federal partners to our office to ensure that our children are safe on the internet and are safe in their communities. So those three key criminal priority areas are all so supported and have incredible investment by our law enforcement partners right here in the Tri-Cities. So having AUSAs right here in our office downstairs to be able to meet with all of our partners and do that critical work is going to be so important to be able to have that face-to-face, as Chief Guerrero was speaking about, to keep building on the infrastructure that has been present for years right here in Eastern Washington. I also want to thank Andrea George for coming here today. And we have just a very strong relationship and collegiality with our criminal defense bar, and that's led by Andrea. And we are very grateful to have that relationship and have that partnership here in Richland, as well as our other courts, where we have a step court that's looking at alternatives and to providing the support for individuals re-entering our community. Our ability to work effectively together with our law enforcement partners and the criminal defense bar to truly seek community justice is and continues to be an absolute priority of my office. So you guys have already heard a bit about our Richland office and the needs for more staff and infrastructure. You all know that we have over 300,000 individuals who live in this beautiful area in our Eastern District that has about 1.5 million residents. And this staffing of an office, which will provide even more infrastructure and ability to better bring those impactful cases in Southeast Washington, will serve 3 counties, Walla Walla, Benton, and Franklin County, cases that arise there, and will allow our AUSAs to be present right here in the courtroom. We're still going to have folks coming down supporting the cases from our Spokane and Yakima offices because we have that much work and we have varied work here that we need to have our AUSAs cover from a variety of perspectives. But having 2 AUSAs stationed here that we are going to be advertising for starting today, which we really want to encourage amazing applicants to join our team at the U.S. Attorney's Office who can bring with a justice-first focus on how do we best serve our community, how do we build the strength and the safety that we need to all enjoy a vibrant, healthy life for our families and for our community. And to speak about my family, I also just want to give extra gratitude to my husband and my kids who are able to be here today. And the words that Judge Shea shared about tenacity, those are nice words of saying how I can be really stubborn and I can be really challenging to work with sometimes because I want to get stuff done. And I'm so grateful for my husband and my kids for their incredible support dealing with my tenacity and my desire to do all I can to address problems that I see and really try to work with everyone. And it's what I think there's just so much beauty in the saying that you can get so much done if you're not worried about getting the credit. So let's all dedicate to getting what we need to get done for our community, to keep showing up together, to decide how can we work together to do what's right, what's the next best step to achieving justice right here in the Tri-Cities and throughout the Eastern District. So again, I'm sure that I missed a few folks, and I'm sure I've missed some of the incredible cases and trials and work that we've been doing for so many years right here in the Eastern District. But I am grateful to be here with all of you. I am grateful for the work that everyone has done here to make this day possible, and I'm looking forward to having our AUSAs here be able to serve this community to the best of our ability to create a safe and strong Eastern Washington. So, thank you. And I can try to take a few questions if there are any about our opening of this office. The cost. So we actually had to do a detailed breakdown of our costs as we were getting this through the process of approval at the Department of Justice. And there's both tangible and intangible costs that are involved. So what we did was calculate the hours of time that our AUSAs are driving from Spokane as well as from our Yakima office, and the court hours that we're investing right here. So in crunching those numbers and in showing the work that we're doing in following up on investigations, meeting with our law enforcement partners, we were able to show that we were actually going to be saving money by bringing AUSAs right here through all of the time hours spent by our AUSAs in all of the travel time and the work that's done to actually support the casework that's already happening here. So the numbers are constantly changing given our different caseloads at different times, but this is really going to be the more efficient, effective, and impactful way to serve this community. So we are starting with our 2 AUSA positions. We currently have a Special Assistant United States Attorney, Laurel Holland, who is doing primarily child exploitation cases. So we'll have a SAUSA role, and then as we get those staffed up, we will bring in support staff from our other offices or additional as needed. Yeah, so we've been tracking the cases that we have been already taken in a variety of ways here in Richland. And one of the metrics we were looking at was how many court hearings do we have? And it's been consistently over 500 hearings a year for many years. And those cases have increased as our law enforcement presence has increased and our efforts to really focus on the narcotics trafficking and drug work and the white collar crime that we're seeing in this area. So there has been, as there's an increase in population, there's often a corresponding increase in criminal activity, and the law enforcement presence really needs to be able to respond effectively to serve a growing population. Oh, we are so excited. So as somebody who did this work as an AUSA in our office, being able to have a staffed office means you have a lot more infrastructure. So we're going to be able to have faster internet, more ability to support our trial work and our discovery work, which is constantly growing and increasing. The infrastructure needs for all the legal profession just so increase over the last few decades with the enhancement of electronic discovery. So being able to properly staff a staffed office with the tools that we need to be able to effectively bring our cases is going to be so beneficial. I'm thrilled about that aspect, which will help all of our cases, including our 2 AUSAs who will be based here. So asking the government question of how long we can get things going can sometimes be, I'm going to give you a broad answer. It is months, not years, and but getting to this point really was an extraordinary achievement. To be able to advertise for our 2 AUSA positions is kind of the first step of a multi-step process. So we will be advertising and hiring, and that generally takes several months as there's background check processes that are involved, and then we'll be building the infrastructure up in our currently existing office. So 2023, we're going to have folks right here based in our office, and the AUSAs are going to be based in the community from the get-go. So there's already going to be people as soon as they're hired on here in Richland, but the actual nuts and bolts of getting the office together will take the time it takes to make it the best office we can right here in Richland. Well, Eastern Washington is a vibrant, wonderful place to live, which fortunately does not have the violent crimes of some other districts in large urban areas. But we do have a lot of community challenges, and our office is already addressing so many of the issues that our communities are facing. And by doing that proactively, ensuring that we are taking on cases of the drug trafficking networks that are coming into our communities and trying to seize those drugs and remove them from the community before they can have the devastating impacts is so critical. So the growth of the population means that there needs to be a growth of services, including law enforcement services, and the ability to take those cases and work them effectively. Yeah, so we're so lucky to have our Spokane office, which is our base main office, with about 23 AUSAs. And we have our Yakima branch office with approximately 6 AUSAs. And then we'll have our office here starting with 2 AUSAs. So we don't have any plans for another office yet. This one we're focusing on first. But these are our 3 largest population centers in the Eastern District of Washington. And we are thrilled to be able to serve all of these larger areas. We also serve our rural communities and have an obligation to do that effectively. So we are still hitting the road. We're not afraid to jump in the car and travel to where we need to be. But this is really going to be an efficient, effective use of our resources to be able to focus our resources right here in the Tri-Cities. Right. Well, thank you very much. And it is now the exciting time where we're beginning a new era of having a staffed office right here in Richland. And we think it's about time to do it with a celebration of a ribbon cutting event. So, are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay.